Wetness can be just as destructive when there is too little plant cover or organic matter to help hold the soil in place.
True. Even normal amounts of rainfall can cause big problems if the soil is left uncovered with no plant roots to help hold the soil.
The problem can be explosive. Check this out. This is video in slow motion of your average raindrop hitting the earth at a speed of 15 miles an hour.
That doesn't sound so fast.
Well, you're just looking at one raindrop. Now consider that the impact or force of lots of raindrops hitting soil particles over 1 square mile. That equals 10,000 tons of TNT.
Now that's powerful. It seems like we'd all notice something like that.
Well, fortunately, most of the ground around us has plants like grass or trees to cover it, or is paved so that rain falls on the cement, not bare dirt. But when rain does fall on exposed soil, the result can be pretty amazing. Remember that each and every raindrop can splash soil as far as 5 feet away. That adds up to a lot of dirt being moved around. A 2-inch rain may remove 1 inch of unprotected soil per acre. That's 150 tons of soil washing somewhere else.
Where does it all go?
Look closely next time it rains and you'll see. What you'll be witnessing is the process of erosion. Raindrops splash onto the soil and move it around. Rainwater collects on land and runs off in small streams that carry away lots of tiny bits of soil. These streams gather together to form larger streams, then rivers and lakes, and so on. Streams or rivers can be loaded with eroded soil, especially in areas where there's lots of exposed soil.
The process of erosion is a natural one. It goes on all the time and has forever. It's the process that has formed some of Utah's and the world's most spectacular scenery. For millions and millions of years, water and wind have carved out the Grand Canyon, Bryce Canyon, and other beautiful areas like Zion National Park. But erosion doesn't just happen in the wilderness, it happens everywhere, and its effects, while natural, are not always positive, especially when you're talking about taking away the small amount of productive topsoil the world has.
There are different kinds of erosion. Landslides are serious erosion on steep hillsides. Landslides have buried whole towns throughout history and continue to be a problem. After all, what's up usually comes down. On flatter ground, sheet erosion removes thin layers of soil over a long period of time. It can go unnoticed until much of the topsoil is gone. You can see real erosion along new roadways or any other bare sloping ground. Water forms small, well-defined channels that carry soil away. When rills become large, the process is called gully erosion. In many places, gully erosion has created spectacular natural disasters by carrying away tons and tons of soil.
So does that mean the Grand Canyon's just a big example of gully erosion?
That's one way to look at it, but the earth can't just be one big national park. We have to preserve our farmlands so we can eat and have clothes and
live! One thing is to remember that plants keep soil from blowing and washing away. If we plant and take care of our grass and stuff, our soil won't wash away. I've also seen gardeners spreading bark chips on top of the dirt around their plants.
That's right. Those bark chips are a form of mulch. Mulch can be wood chips, grass clippings, any big piece of natural material that will cover soil for a while, but decays naturally.
That's great if you're planting a permanent lawn or garden at your house. Don't farmers need to expose the soil to plant crops every year?
It's true that many farmers' fields are bare at least a small part of the time, and it's true that some erosion takes place. But it's truly amazing what can be done to control erosion by using just a few common sense ideas like planting cover crops.
Cover crops?
Yeah. In the fall, some farmers will harvest the crops they've been growing all summer and then plant certain plants that will grow quickly, putting down roots and covering the ground to protect the soil until the farmer tills his fields the following spring. Then, the farmer just tills in the cover crop, which by itself is one good way to return some natural organic matter back to the soil.
It's like living mulch.
Exactly. Farmers also rotate their crops. They'll grow one crop on their land one year and another the next. Planting different crops every year will help keep the soil nutrients from becoming used up. Sometimes farmers will even give a part of their land a rest for a year or two.
You know, I've seen where farmers will grow corn but leave the corn stalks in the ground all winter.
Exactly. Even though the corn has been harvested, the stalks still help protect the soil from rain, and the roots still hold the soil in place.
I know what else. I've seen farms on hillsides and the farmers have terraced the land. They've plowed level places that look like steps a giant might use. I'm sure that helps keep erosion from taking place because the landscape isn't as steep anymore.
Good examples of terracing can be found all over Utah. You can also see in some terraced areas that farmers have left some trees or grasses. This helps preserve the landscape. Unfortunately, you can see examples of what can happen when you don't terrace. In this video, you can pick out how the subsoil has been exposed by years of topsoil erosion. The topsoil was gradually washed off the steep hillside. That's it, all collected down at the bottom of the hill.
Terracing could have helped prevent that. The rows in that field run right down the hill, too.
By running the rows in the same direction as the slope of the hill, the farmer is creating hundreds of little stream beds that run right downhill. It would have been better to practice what's called contour plowing and planting.
Remember Deborah Spielmaker?
She teaches kids about agriculture, and she's going to show us how contour plowing works.
That's right, Zach. It's pretty easy to control erosion when you're plowing on flat ground. But when a farmer comes to a hill, he needs to do something else. And rather than going up and over the hill, even though that's fun in a tractor, what it does is it causes little rills or gullies to form, and as it rains, the topsoil runs downhill and ends up at the bottom. What's easier or better to do is if you go around the hill, and that's called farming on the contour. And what that does is it leaves deep furrows or plow marks on the side of the hill, and that way the water will be caught in the little furrows. Let's visit some kids from Wellsville Elementary School who, with the help of Dr. Rich Koenig, are going to learn a lot more about how to control soil erosion.
Okay, what are some of the things we do to control soil erosion? We've got several demonstrations here. This is what's called leaving residue, crop residue on the soil surface. This is just straw from a wheat field. If we leave that on the surface, it'll help to anchor the soil in place. This is another technique called strip cropping. Here we've got strips of a crop, in this case grass, alternated with strips of bare soil. So we might be growing something like corn or grain here in these areas, but we're leaving these strips in grass. So we've got something here that'll help hold the soil in place. This would be like the lawn on your front yard, for example, or maybe a pasture where you've got cows grazing. This is continuous cover. This is a crop that we always have in place, something there to anchor the soil. This is an example of something that we call contour farming. If the slope is running this direction and water is moving this direction off of a slope or off of a field, and we plow, we make furrows in the opposite direction of the movement of water, we'll actually trap some water in each of these furrows and trap some of the soil. So this should also reduce soil erosion. And then the final demonstration we have here is just a cropped field, a field where we have a plant growing. This is wheat, young wheat plants growing. This is also going to trap the soil. It's going to hold the soil in place as rain or other water moves across the field.
Next, some girls will cause a rain event on these small fields, and some boys will help catch the rain in clear beakers as it runs off. By comparing the amount of eroded soil in each beaker, we can see which erosion control method works best. Which of the plantings do you think will keep the most soil in the pan, and which will keep the least?
I would guess that the pans with the most plants covering the soil and holding it in place would lose the least amount of soil.
Yeah, and the trees with the least plants and the most bare dirt would lose the most soil. Are we right?
You sure are. But if you really want to know about farming, you should visit with my friend Bill Rigby. He lives in Centerville, and he's been farming there with his family, well, since before Bill was Bill.
Started farming here with my father many years ago. He started in the 1800s, and we had quite a slope here. We used to just raise hay and grain and orchard because it was so steep. Put the water now out of open ditches into closed pipes. We've pressurized the water so we can put the water where we need it, and we can bring it out in the amounts that we need to water either 10 rows or 50 rows, whichever we wish. We've also controlled the erosion by putting it in gated pipe when we bring it out of the pressure pipe. We put it in gated pipe, and we can measure that gate just to where it'll just come to the end of a 400-foot row and just barely seep out of the row. Thereby we do two things. We stop the erosion and we get the most out, about 80% efficiency out of our water system. Okay, this is what we call this green patch of grass here, and where the tree is, our settling pond, because we bring the water from that side of the field and this side of the field, and it all congregates right here, and any amount of silt or sand has to run through this grass, and we stop it. And we bring it over here to a ditch. This is the sand right here that we pull out of this ditch. We'll shovel it out just, maybe every 4 or 5 days we'll shovel a little sand out here. You can see the silt. This is this heavier black silt that comes out of the sand, and this is the sand. And that's not much for a full summer's work, maybe a yard or two of sand out of that whole field, maybe 7 or 8 acres of farm ground there. And we feel that we've got a real good program going because we don't get much erosion, and what erosion we do every 4 or 5 years we can pack it back up the hill and respread it on the ground. Thus we don't wear out our resource. We keep that resource in place.
As you can see, farmers and their families have spent years trying to improve their land. They've put ditches in, trying to control the water, and also other measures to control runoff or soil erosion from occurring. Erosion, though, doesn't just start on the farm. Erosions can be found in other places, too.
Anytime people disturb or uncover the soil is a time to keep erosion in mind. Construction of buildings and roads disturbs large areas, altering the natural water flow in the area.
Builders can be careful to leave existing plants undisturbed, or introduce plant cover to the area, or spread mulch to keep the soil in place. They can build ponds that will catch the water and give runoff a place to go.
They can build fences called silt fences, or other barriers to catch the soil that would otherwise be carried away down the steep slopes.
Erosion control is a real challenge, even if it's not on farms or around construction. Another friend of mine, Brent Bunderson, works for Utah State University Extension Service in Tooele County. One of the things that he looks at is controlling erosion and improving the soil in areas most of us would consider wild and natural. He's at an area where there's really no topsoil at all, just subsoil rock and sand, a surface condition that's sometimes called pebble pavement.
Topsoil plays a very important role in the proper functioning of a watershed. We're standing on a site where most of the topsoil has been eroded away. All that is left here at the surface is the pebbles or rocks that was part of that soil. We call this pebble pavement. If we take a closer look at this pebble pavement, we'll see that it would be rather difficult, if not impossible, for the seeds of grass and flowers to become established here. There just isn't any fine soil. However, if we dig down just a little bit, we can see that there is pretty good soil underneath there. The events that created this situation here were several things. One of them was that when the settlers came here, whenever there was a fire started by lightning, they would run out and put the fire out. That allowed trees to spread. The other thing that was involved in this was grazing of livestock. The combination of the two left the area without any grass. And it also created a condition that led to some pretty serious erosion. Here we have another example of the pebble pavement created by the conditions that we talked about earlier, the presence of the junipers and grazing. Simply removing the junipers is not going to correct the situation. We have to have some kind of major disturbance to bring soil to the surface. One of the best tools that we have to cause this disturbance, to bring soil to the surface again, and to remove the junipers is a treatment called chaining. This area here was chained, burned, and reseeded just a year ago. This provides excellent habitat for wildlife and feed for livestock and for the wildlife.
To establish grasses and flowers and other shrubs once again in an area that has been overtaken by juniper forests, some land managers resort to a practice called chaining. These trees are removed all at once, and native grasses and other plants are planted. In a short time, the area is transformed. The fine root systems developed by grasses act as water channels that carry rainwater deep into the earth that will fill our underground water supplies. People rely on underground water for drinking.
But all water doesn't immediately soak into the soil.
When it rains, the water has to go somewhere.
That's right. Water runs downhill, and that's why farmers, ranchers, and other landowners don't farm the lowland area. Instead, they keep these areas as waterways, lined with grass. They work with nature by letting the water go its natural way without causing erosion. Not too long ago, many people looked at low-lying areas where water collects as a nuisance, places to be filled in or drained and made into farmland or neighborhoods. But more and more, we're learning about how these areas called wetlands fit in our environment. They're very important. Wetlands provide a natural filter for our Earth's water supply.
Someone told me that 3/4 of the earth is covered with water.
That means 25% is land.